Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome 2022 Bradley Prize winner, Wilfred McClay.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's a joy and a privilege to be here with you this evening. My heart is full of gratitude for reasons beyond even what I can name. It's an immense honor to begin with, simply to be on the same program with the two other recipients who are extraordinary men who have endured rigors far beyond those that I have endured in my life. They're both heroes, American heroes of a very high order. And then to find myself lifted up into the company of the Bradley Fellows, the Bradley Prize recipients in the years past, a cloud of witnesses that testify to this country's special calling as a home for excellence, and to the Bradley Foundation's tireless support of that ideal. At a time when the luster of so many once vaunted institutions is fading, this one is gaining strength. May it ever be so. I'm going to build my brief remarks tonight around a story. Now, you've heard it said that anecdotes are not data, but so much the worse for data. Stories are what make the world go round. Stories are the means by which we orient ourselves to the world and to one another. We're enveloped by stories, stories of which we're a part already and that are part of us, stories that have formed the basis of our common life even before we lisp our first words. Stories drawn from the Bible, from nursery rhymes, from children's books, great literature, classic movies, biographies, historical accounts, or from humbler sources like the lore of families and the memories of old friends. So here's my humble little story for tonight. A few years ago, I was fortunate enough to have dinner here in Washington with an old and very wise friend at his favorite seafood place near DuPont Circle. Some of you may already know who I'm talking about. I remarked that he seemed to be spending more and more of his time in a certain foreign country. He acknowledged the fact, somewhat ruefully, paused for a moment, and then said very methodically, "I want to live in a serious country." It may be relevant to point out that the foreign country in question is Israel, where seriousness is an existential requirement. But it's equally important to point out that the gentleman in question is an American patriot of the highest order, the author of distinguished books on the subject. For him to say such a thing was, for me, a very serious matter. So, have we become an unserious country? I dismissed the idea at first. Millions of good, responsible, ordinary Americans still go about their business, raising their families, paying their bills, participating in the life of their communities, building their futures. They don't have time for the insanities that are polarizing our culture. But then I thought again and considered the evidence. Would a serious country have run up a national debt of now over $30 trillion during times of relative peace and prosperity? Would a serious country have used that borrowed money to feather its nest with the profusion of cheap consumer goods and other markers of material prosperity, goods produced by a ruthless foreign power employing what amounts to slave labor? Would a serious country have leaders so deeply preoccupied with domestic wrangling and partisan advantage that they fail to see that the rest of the world is watching and taking note, and that the hostile powers of the world are even now calculating the possibilities that our feckless leadership has opened up for them? Would a serious country actively seek to demoralize its urban police forces and undermine the authority of parents? Would it promulgate arbitrary and contradictory policies regarding public health, causing angry divisions in the land and distrust of authority that may last for many years to come? Would a serious country allow a 20-year investment in Afghanistan to go up in smoke? Would it abandon the Afghans who had trusted in its protection, particularly the Afghan women and girls, along with a major air base and $90 billion of weaponry, an amount larger than the annual military budget of all but 2 countries in the world? Would a serious country allow the apparatus by which it elects its leaders to become so corrupted and fall into such disrepair that the citizenry of both major political parties no longer trust the outcome of elections? I could go on, alas, in this litany, and you know that I could. But here's the question that most concerns me this evening. Would a serious country so completely lose perspective on itself and on its own past that it would entertain the idea that the nation was founded on slavery rather than on the ideals that have made it a beacon to the rest of the world? And would a serious country think it appropriate to teach its children that the nation's past is best understood as a parade of horrors to which the most appropriate response is not pride, but lacerating shame? Well, I'm not comfortable with those things, and neither are you. Land of Hope, my book, represented my small attempt to provide an adequate response to these questions about our past. In the 3 years since the book was published, I've learned how many of us have wanted and needed just such a book. Nobody wants or needs an account of the American past that's sanitized. We know about our faults, and we understand the importance of owning them. But what we have wanted and needed instead is an account that places those faults in proper perspective, to understand them in much the same way that we understand every flawed but fundamentally admirable person we've ever known and loved in our personal lives. That is the nature of love, not to demand perfection, but to see imperfection in the light of something larger. And the unwillingness to love is the greatest unseriousness of all. We need to become a serious country again. And to do that, we need to believe in ourselves again. Believe in the reason we have been placed here as a land of hope in a world that needs hope more than ever. We need to understand that a world without America will be immeasurably diminished, both in material and spiritual terms, and that we have no choice but to live up to the responsibilities that come with our many blessings. Our history can, I believe, be an enormous resource in that regard. The work will not be easy. There's no guarantee of success. But it will be much harder to live with ourselves and with the rebuke of the future should we shrink from this challenge. And once we understand what's at stake, we may feel a certain exhilaration that comes of knowing what our circumstances and our character demand of us. Let me close with a quotation. It's the same quotation I used at the beginning of Land of Hope. And it's a reflection on the uses of the past written by the novelist John Dos Passos in 1941, early 1941. This is the quotation. In times of change and danger, when there is a quicksand of fear under men's reasoning, a sense of continuity with generations gone before can stretch like a lifeline across the scary present and get us past the idiot delusion of the exceptional now that blocks good thinking. Yes, we too live in a time of danger, But consider this. When Dos Passos wrote these words in early 1941, at the very moment he wrote these words, Adolf Hitler's formidable war machine controlled all of continental Europe. Only the British Isles held out, and who knew how long that would last? Dos Passos could have been forgiven for thinking that this terrifying moment, when it seemed possible that the light of liberty would be extinguished in the world forever, was a moment without historical precedent. Instead, he invoked the past and the idea of a historical consciousness that could, quote, stretch like a lifeline across the scary present and help us to gain strength from the knowledge that we remain connected to those who came before us. We need to do that too. We can have that same connection, but to do it, we first have to learn or relearn the story that connects us with them and make that story our own. As we do so, we will discover that we also are learning about ourselves and about all the things, great things, that even ordinary people like us can do when they breathe the fresh air of freedom and hope. That is what America is all about. And we're not going to let that possibility die, not without a fight. Thank you.